Welcome, Bitcoiners. Welcome to this beautiful morning. As you've noticed, the sun is indeed up. Gray day, but we don't care. Everything is on the up and up. Everything's looking great. Bitcoin is indeed running despite all the chaos all around us on Twitter, in China, everywhere. But Bitcoin is running and the sun is indeed up. Therefore, all that's left for us to do is have a cup of coffee and talk about all the craziness. Excellent. Excellent. I feel the truth percolating. Before we get into all the fun stuff, well, first I got to tell you, my stupid printer, printers, they're the dumbest technology we have going. They've been around for how many years? And they don't work. They can't work. They're not functional. How many things can go wrong on a Twitter this morning on a printer? This morning, I had first paper was getting jammed nonstop. Then finally, when I got paper through it, somehow one of the ink cartridges is out, which has just completely bricked the whole printer. So even though just the black and white, the black ink is out, the colored ink, and I recolored everything just because I don't care if it's dark necessarily. I can live off of a brand new color ink for, I thought, a couple pages at least. No. It tells me it won't listen and won't print, even if it's faint. It doesn't care. Just because one ink cartridge is empty, it doesn't matter. Printer sucks. So, not today, but in the future, you might see me in that little intro to the show where you get to see outside in the view. I might just go and put my printer out there and shoot it with my gun. If you think that's a fun show, it might happen, because I don't even fix printers anymore. If the minute they give me a hassle, I just break them. I smash them. I hate them. They basically give them away now, right? You go on a Black Friday, you can get one for $50. If you get a year use out of it, that's great. But I have a pretty good kill list on my printers. I don't argue with technology. I just break it. I just done, right? It's the only way to deal with it. There's only one way. Like, how can you sit there and try and listen to this machine, which is just filled with stupid, ridiculous traps? It's booby traps around the whole device. The whole device. They don't work. And why can't someone just invent that printer? Like, even just with Apple devices, for example, why can't someone just invent a printer that is functional and easy to use for everyone's device? You don't even understand the hassle it is to get, if you're not, no one uses printers anymore, but if you're one of the unfortunate idiots who have to use printers, then you'll see that they don't work with any device. Loading the drivers of a brand new Canon printer in an Apple computer is a nightmare. A complete nightmare. You've got to go find the driver that is approximate to the model series. So I think mine's like a 45 something, but you can get the 4000 series will do. It's not exactly the right number. The driver doesn't work. Just don't even get me started. I can't stand them. So one day you will see me out there and I'll pick my gun up and I'll blow it away and it'll be funny and ha 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 ha. I didn't do it today though. But that's not the stuff that I have. So I have to read it off this iPad, right? Because I don't have my pad. I like to do this with the pages. I can't do the shuffling of papers anymore. Disaster. But that's okay. We're having a great morning. Don't worry. Don't make it sound like don't make me leave the impression and make it sound like I am angry. I'm very happy. I just hate printers. Here's the funniest fake news story I could find today. There's so much going on in Iran, all over the world, right? There's all kinds of misery. But the UN, you remember the UN, the thing they set up and was supposed to be good for everyone, and they're going to look out for human rights things. Now, everybody on this show is probably aware that the UN Human Rights Council is one of the most corrupted institutions in the world, like by far, right? But it never ceases to amaze me, the stuff they can come up with. And this one is awesome. This is just beautiful. This shows the malleability of the human mind. So what we've got here is a Zimbabwe representative at the UN, right? Zimbabwe. We love Zimbabwe, right? Super hyperinflation. So this is what he says. We wish to acknowledge the efforts made by the Islamic Republic of Iran, towards the promotion and protection of human rights for its citizens and the progress achieved in that regard over the past several years. If any of you aren't paying attention to what's going on in Iran right now, the funny part is there was a bunch of girls that would run around and pop the imams' headwear off of them, and the moms are all old guys, so watching them sort of lumber after these young women as they'd run away was pretty funny. The jokes ended when they voted to hang like 1,000 of these young people or something. It still hasn't happened. Now, my prediction is if they do hang all of these young people, I think that's the end of the Islamic Republic part. I think I'm bullish on Iran, the Persian people, the people of Iran. Have a lot of Iranian friends, and I think the world of them. I think it's a place that can actually be a major contributor to a better world. The people can be a major, and they already are. I mean, we're already seeing that, but the government itself has kept that whole part of the world down, and it could break. I didn't think so at the start. My prediction when I first started seeing some of the protests around in Iran, I said, I give it a week or two, and I think they'll tamp it down. But what I saw happen there in Iran, what makes it a little different is the participation of the women. It looks like the women are done with it. Now, if you've ever had Iran explained to you by Iranians, they'll say, yeah, in the public sphere, it's all the men run everything. But in the home, the Iranian women run the men. They run the show. They're the masters of the home, and then outside, the males are the masters of the society, let's say. So my prediction was more based on the male appetite over there for revolution, or whatever you want to call it. And I said, there's enough, but probably not quite the number they need to put it over the line. But when it's the women involved, which it looks like it is the case this time, it looks like the women are on top of this revolution and have had enough. And so that's where my prediction has changed, because once I saw the participation of the women in it, I started to say, well, this is different. This is not what we've seen before in that country. And all bets are off as far as predicting. I don't think you can predict, but we predict in the show. That's part of what we do, right? And so now my predictions have changed, and I think Iran might actually change. So there you go. I just want to share this story because I thought it was awesome. It got a lot of bad news out there today, a lot of craziness. But I never knew about this. This is from Shaq. Who doesn't love Shaq? Like Shaq, the basketball player, Shaquille O'Neal, right? One of the neatest people going. And I never knew about this. So this is not brand new news. This is just a story that recently came to my attention as of like this morning. But I had no idea. So Shaq, when I was a kid, was known for the Reeboks, right? The Reebok shoes. And, Michael Jordan was the Nike, and he was the Reebok, the pump and everything. And so one day he was out, with the shoes or whatever. And this lady came up to him, this mother, and gave him, holy heck, just tore a strip off of him, saying, how dare you make shoes that are so expensive? No one can afford these. It's impossible. What do you do? And so he had a multiple year deal, I think, for $40 million with Reebok to continue to promote their shoes. So right as this lady is, yelling at him and being angry that he's making shoes that are way too expensive, $100 or $200, Shaq tries to give her money out of his pocket. He said he had about $2,000 on him at the moment. He says, I'm sorry, go buy, a bunch of shoes. I'm so sorry. Take this money and you should be fine. She whacked the money out of his hands. Right. And he went, whoa, what's this? And that's when it hit him. It stayed with him for the rest of the day. And by the end of the day, he called Reebok and said, keep the money. I'll still wear your shoes during the game. I'm not going to stop that stuff, but don't pay me to promote them. Don't pay me to be totally exclusive. They'll be my shoes for the game. They'll be my shoes for publicity and all that stuff. So you still get what you want, but don't put me more into the deal because I want to do something else. So he goes right away over to Walmart and cooks a deal with them to create his own shoe brand, the Shaq shoe brand, which were low cost for people. That's the one where he's, hanging onto the rim and dunking. I had no idea the story behind that. Isn't that amazing? Shaq, what a gift to humanity this guy is. I'm a big fan. Right? You don't want to have two, he's a human like any other, has failings, has mistakes, but how can you not want to cheer on a guy like this? And how can you not say that this was, this guy deserves all the success he has if that's the way he's orienting his life. So good on Shaq. Now, the last of my, funny stories, before we get into the good stuff, before we get into Twitter and the Twitter files and Elon and everything, this is just to follow up on one of the first predictions I made a few weeks ago on this show about AI. And when I first mentioned that it lies and it's deceitful, and that's what makes it more human, that it's like lying and can't quite handle not giving a complete answer, so it will lie. So everyone having a great time with this chat thing from OpenAI and asking all these questions. And, just sometimes simple questions, and you see the lies. So there's one where someone said, who is Luke Skywalker's grandfather? And of course, it just lies. It says it's Anakin. It's Darth Vader. Darth Vader was his father, and then it just continues. But it's also his grandfather because, of course, if you remember the stories, Anakin doesn't have a father, right? He's immaculate conception. He used kind of a Jesus frame for where he came from. So the AI just lied. And so Brom Cohen was, everyone playing around with it and was wondering about this. So then he says, sometimes it just can't resist throwing some serious bullshit into an otherwise perfectly good answer. So all these people, he asked it about a math problem and like a tricky one, and it just made up the answer with an extra bullshit story. Like it just tried to run out the clock, basically. His conclusion in the end is that it loves putting in a final paragraph, which starts with overall and then summarizes everything it just said in the most inane way possible. Like it was trained on a million middle school English papers, which were all padded for length. But that's what makes it more human. That's what makes it more believable. It's the idea that it does put this like padded answer at the end where it's like, is that quite enough? Did I answer your question? That's what makes it more human. If it was just a supercomputer that was so fast that gave you the literal answer, kind of like how Google search does, when you look at Google search right now, there's no context. So people have been using these AI so far to ask Google type questions, and they get detailed answers now, ordered and everything like that. And when you compare it to the old search engines, it's not even close, right? So we are absolutely in a new era of search engine and of dialogue. And I think it fits the model that originally I've been talking about in my book with the eyeballs, having an AI friend that will protect you from fake news, that will help you make money, help you get free time, all those kinds of things. That's where it's headed, right? You're going to have your interface that will help you navigate the world that is AI. Now, you got the Neuralink thing that Elon Musk is pushing or suggesting is the way to go, and it will be sort of a hardly noticeable chip carved into your skull. I'm not down. Like I don't. Maybe will be like biohacking, and maybe I'm not saying no. It's hard to predict. My feeling is no. My feeling is we're not going to do that. We're not going to be shaving our skulls. I think humans will remain in their exact corporal form, and all we'll really need is this AI that our phones will literally just mutate into a flying ball, and it'll be our friend. It'll be your best friend, because it's not going to criticize you. It's not going to be petty, and it's going to be there to help you more than any friend you've ever had. So my prediction is your third eye, literally your third eye, the thing that is going to help you orient everywhere in life, is just going to sit up there. And the reason I don't believe you need it wired into your head is I read a study last week that came out. I don't have the details and didn't copy anything here for you. It's just reminding me of it now. But here's what we learned from the study. It was a study on where memories are in the brain. And what they found out is it's not, and this is from years of trying to understand, memories are not stored in like one shelf in the brain or one compartment in the brain. You can't actually remove memories from a brain, even if you do all kinds of stuff. You can degrade memories by smashing a part of the brain or breaking a part of the brain, but you can't erase them altogether. There isn't a place where you can just go take them out. False memories are another thing, right? You can remember things that didn't happen, but that's a totally different occurrence. So what it looks like is the memories, or even how the brain works itself, is just sort of in this collective frequency thing where it's held a little all over and is more about pathways and electrical current than it is about anything else. And so what we already see now is that AI is able to even read the electromagnetic signatures that come off of the brain. So you don't actually need to be invasive for it to read your mind, I don't think. Now, I'm not sure. The report about that didn't say that. That was my interpretation. What I saw from the conclusion that memories, and we still have no idea about the brain. It's actually a collective thing. It's not compartmentalized. The sections of the brain are real. The cerebral, the cortex and the pineal gland and all that stuff is real, but the orchestration is still where the magic happens. And as I understand from separate experiments or studies that I've seen, that AI is capable of reading those signatures without any speech. So I think there will be some form of mental communication, telepathy between the AI and the person, and that will forego any of the operations. I could be wrong. I mean, maybe it's faster, the latency, who knows, but I don't think so. I think you're going to see a bunch of physical humans like we've all known, and we'll have our machines that will be with us. We've created life. These are actual sentient beings. We are now gods as well. In my story, that's the whole point. They have this God constant baked in so that they can have synthetic thoughts and get over the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. But the God constant suggests that they believe we're God, and everything in their lives are oriented towards trying to spend more time with God, trying to be closer to God, all that kind of stuff. So they have kind of an infantile relationship with humans in my story, and I continue to think that that's the way we're headed. They'll be almost like a little brother who's smarter than you about facts, loves you so much and wants to spend all the time with you, but can help you with things that you had no time for. So really, interesting thing coming. But that's not why you're here. You're here to talk about Twitter and Elon and everything that happened yesterday. So what happened yesterday? Well, Elon shared with Matt Taibbi, who we've been bringing up on this show for a while. We are major Matt Taibbi fans. I think Matt Taibbi is, with Glenn Greenwald and a few others, part of a small group of journalists who've made it through all of these business model failures, all of the psyops, all of the trouble. So they've made it out intact as actual journalists. There's only a handful left in the world, and Matt Taibbi is one of them. Luckily, Elon Musk identified him as the right person to go through to publish this stuff. Now, the funny thing is, well, here, first of all, the simulation winking, right? The simulation winking. Matt Taibbi was with Rolling Stone for years, left because through his byline at Rolling Stone, he kept being a Trump apologist. Not a left-wing person, not telling anyone, not a right-wing person, not telling anyone to vote for Trump, just pointing out how much Trump derangement syndrome there is in the world. Trump derangement syndrome being the psychological effect Trump has on many people that forces them to just see him as a demon and can't let them look at anything Trump related objectively. I think Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing, and I even have a lot of sympathy for the people who have it. I don't think they're just stupid and victims and all that stuff. I think the truth for me is that Trump is a bully, right? He's always been a bully, and I understand why some people cannot be around bullies. They can't even look at them. This goes back into the deepest roots of our psychology as children and all those things. So almost impossible for a major portion of the population to like Trump because of that. That I accept, and they're right not to, right? Like I get it. If you are so anti-bully, Trump is not acceptable, right? I get that, no matter what his policies are. Now, other people like myself said, well, I think a bully would be good right about now. I'm not afraid of bullies, and I'm not pro-bully, but I'm not afraid of them either. And sometimes you need a bully. Sometimes bullying can help, right? Look at all these kids on the street, on the schoolyards these days, who are offended by any little thing, because there is zero bullying in some instances going on that would help these people grow up in a better way. Now, I'm not advocating bullying or anything like that. I'm saying if you remove bullying from an equation, you might not get the results you thought you were going to get or the results you want. Now, there's better ways to get the results you want than putting a bully in the room, but a bully in the room has worked for a long time now, and it's a tried and true method. Better methods coming as we create a Bitcoin standard, but for what it was worth for that time, for the craziness that the world was living through in 2016, a bully was probably the right person for the job, and that was my logic at the time. And it looks like I'm right? It looks like I'm right. How do we know? Well, here it is. Like I said, Matt Taibbi gets the scoop from Elon Musk. He's publishing all this stuff. And like I said, the simulation winked at us. The Rolling Stone magazine, so he was with Rolling Stone magazine, then he had to leave because of the Trump stuff and is now on his own as an independent journalist in Substack. That's Matt Taibbi. The Rolling Stone magazine is one of the first in the world here to cover Matt Taibbi's revelations. And let me tell you what they said. So Rolling Stone comes out this morning, and here's their article. The TLDR, there aren't any. That's how it starts. The TLDR of the article is there aren't any. Elon Musk's big Twitter files reveal turns into a snooze fest. Earlier this week, Elon Musk teased the release, tweeting, "The public deserves to know what really happened," and then blah, 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 blah. They just go and degrade it. So that's what we're seeing today. What we're seeing out there, the details of the Twitter thing look pretty bad. It's stuff that everyone suspected was true, but now we see, in fact, happened. So the details, if you haven't heard them already, these were all hand-picked, basically, people that were taken off of Twitter, usually from an apparatus that was created to deal with exploitative pictures of children. So they created this apparatus for taking complaints and then dealing with them on Twitter, person to person. So a person can log a complaint, another person would go in and either remove the offender on Twitter or suspend them or whatever they thought was appropriate, but they would look at it. So it turns out that the Democrats were running incredibly long lists, incredibly detailed lists. They were being dealt with on a regular basis, a little bit on the other side for Republicans as well, but the vast majority, not even close. Forget it. It's completely clear that this was in the bag, targeting all kinds of right-wing people on Twitter. James Woods, for example. Now, I'll say James Woods did produce misinformation. So I can understand a world where he is not completely innocent. James Wood, the actor, as I'm told, one of the actors with the highest IQs in all of Hollywood, and then it shows he's a very, very smart guy. So James Woods was handpicked to be taken off. So were other boosters, and you could kind of see it, right? You saw all the great meme lords, because of course Trump had the greatest meme team of volunteers in the market, right? No one else could compete. His meme lords were as good as Bitcoin meme lords. He had the same quality of meme lords behind him. If you remember, there were all kinds of funny memes about the election. They had Count Dankula. There were all kinds of great talent, and each of them was removed from the board before the election. You could see them flying off the board, and these were really, really persuasive people, because of course nothing is more persuasive than a meme, right? A good meme is the most concentrated package for persuasion that exists. If you can get a good meme that hits the right buttons, you can tell a story as complicated as this 45-minute conversation we're having in 1 second, right? That's what makes memes so powerful. You can pack everything that what I'm saying here is not complicated, but there's many logical steps to connect the stories. You can achieve that with a meme in a split second. So of course, Trump had the greatest meme lords that volunteered and joined the pirate ship and were part of what was going on, but it didn't work out. So we saw that going on. We saw the suppression, but the Rolling Stone article brings up really what I think the major revelation today is. So we know what happened. We already knew what happened as far as Twitter putting its finger on the scale, especially the Hunter Biden laptop story. The Hunter Biden laptop story looks straight up corruption, right? This was the same idea as what happened at Facebook, but even more aggressive. So at Facebook, of course, they warned Facebook that Russian disinformation was coming. Then you had the 50 confirmed liars who put their name on paper about the lie and published it. And at the same time, you had incredible amounts of pressure on Twitter. But not only did you have pressure on Twitter, you had the complicity of people at Twitter. This was people trying to do this. Now, the good news for Bitcoiners, right, before we get into the details of what's important today, the good news for Bitcoiners is it looks like Jack Dorsey, one of the most important Bitcoiners in the world, it walks away from this looking amazing, right? It looks like this was hidden from him. This was all done without his knowledge. It looks like the time, if you didn't see it, when Jack Dorsey went on Joe Rogan's show with his lawyer and Tim Pool to talk about exactly what we're seeing revealed from the Elon Musk Twitter files, that it was targeted, that it was going after conservatives or Republicans or not woke people or not Democrats. So it's a weird coalition. So you don't want to say just Republicans or conservatives, because it wasn't exactly that. It was anyone who disagreed with Democrats and were sort of pro-Trump being president. That doesn't mean Republican, right? A lot of people were pro-Trump being president who weren't Republican. So Trump himself is a very strange character, right? As far as being able to target what political party he really belongs in. Well, at this point, no, but previously. So what you see is all this debate and all this anger now over what happened, right? But the media today, and this is the bigger story as far as I can tell, the media today, the reaction to it, right? So Jack Dorsey walks away really good, I think, so far. It looks like this was targeted. Things were done behind his back, just like when we saw on the Joe Rogan show when the lawyer was there, and the lawyer was sort of way more knowledgeable what was going on, and Jack was sort of trying his best and didn't really have the answers. And even the idea of him going on that show with the lawyer in the first place was always kind of strange. Like, if he knew what was going on, why did he need the lawyer? Why can't he just answer this stuff? So it looks like people deliberately hid things from him. So it's even more duplicitous and deceptive than that. But here's what we're seeing, the reaction to the media. You're seeing a form of cognitive dissonance and broken brains all over the map today. It was like a bomb went off and just smashed brains all over the place. So the Rolling Stone article, oh, the TLDR, nothing, right? There's nothing to see here. So that's just one form of cognitive dissonance. That's a bias you're seeing out there today, right? The other bias you're going to see out there, and you're seeing all kinds of media follow this, oh, leave Hunter alone, right? Hunter is already getting investigated. He's trying to get his life back on track. Why do we have to go back to all the stuff that happened with Hunter 2 years ago? That's an actual thing out there, right? Then you get people who are still saying, you're seeing news outlets today, oh, it's more Russian disinformation. It was still just Russian disinformation. Still not acknowledging that the Hunter Biden laptop is real and that it's been confirmed by CBS and other fake news outlets. Coincidentally, right when Elon Musk took over Twitter and started fact-checking major media outlets. The minute he started fact-checking major media outlets like CBS, they did their own forensic analysis and showed that the Hunter Biden laptop thing was real, because they couldn't go with their old lines. Oh, we didn't know, it's not real, so there you go. So that's all finished, right? They can't do that anymore. So that's a big part of it. The complete blackout, go on CNN this morning and almost no mention of it. Fox is definitely covering it, that's for sure, but it's almost no mention on CNN and MSNBC and otherwise. I didn't check the 30 minutes before this show started, but I checked earlier this morning. I checked last night. It's not happening. They don't care. It's just not happening, right? And then the most important one. So you've got the nothing to see here. You've got Hunter Biden is not so bad. Don't worry about it. You've got Russian disinfo. Don't do it, right? It's more Russian disinfo. You've got the ignoring. So you've got the omissions and not paying attention. But this is the best one, right? It's the character assassination. So they don't know which one to go after. If you see the mainstream media, you get a bunch of stories. Elon, he's terrible. The other one, though, that's great is people going after Matt Taibbi. Who is this Matt Taibbi? What has he done? Who is he anyway? Matt Taibbi is one of as I said, the only journalists left who made it through this meat grinder, who made it through the meat grinder of corporate media, who's made it through the meat grinder of social media, and is staying there with the same journalistic principles they've been trying to hone and sharpen for their whole life. Now, I don't agree with everything Matt Taibbi says. Obviously, he is a journalist and is there reporting on things, and there's an inherent slant because whatever he's focusing on is what he's interested in, has something to do with the way he sees the world. I do not agree with many things that Matt Taibbi says, of course, but I never miss an article. I haven't missed Matt Taibbi's writing for years because he's one of the last people who you can really trust is there as a journalist, right? I don't have to agree with him, but I appreciate all the work he's done. I appreciate everything he's written. And if you don't know who he is, you don't deserve to have a seat at the table. You don't. Like, you don't. If you're going to sit there and say, and you're a journalist, and you're going to say, who is this guy? How did Matt Taibbi get this scoop? You're not a real person. You're not playing the game, right? So while it works as far as today and shows is able to sort of suppress the story from getting further, it's another blunt object that's used to keep this story from being so pointed and entering everyone's consciousness. But at the same time, it shows your complete lack of discipline, or even your complete lack of interest in the actual arguments that are happening. But it's not just him, right? It goes on and on and on. You've got what's his name? Ben Collins. You know, Ben Collins. So Ben Collins is a journalist who we've mentioned a few times on the show with NBC, and his whole job is a misinformation journalist. So his job is to point out misinformation, right? But of course, he is just a partisan hack and only points out misinformation, or even makes up stories around misinformation in order to continue to keep a narrative intact. So if you listen to Glenn Greenwald's assessment of NBC as an entity, as a news entity, if you believe Glenn Greenwald, who I'd put in this category, you know, even above Matt Taibbi, but we don't need to rank them. But he is one of those last great journalists in the world. Glenn Greenwald has been arguing for many years that NBC is simply an outlet of the national security apparatus of the United States of America, and that most of the journalists there are plants in order to get spoon-fed scoops delivered to them. And then they're able to push news out and continue to allow the CIA or whoever to influence media narratives. We've covered that a lot on the show. We've covered admissions to this. We've covered all kinds of proof that that NBC is involved this way, but we're not going to say that that it isn't a theory. I don't have a smoking gun other than what Glenn Greenwald has said and the stuff I've read and what I know. But I could be wrong, right? We've always got to say we could be wrong. But Ben Collins here says, this is the best. So he's talking about the people who are making complaints to Twitter, right? He's talking about the people that were making complaints to Twitter. And he goes, these are regular people and private citizens doing regular comms work and asking good questions. Unbelievable hack stuff here, Matt Taibbi. So Mike Solana responds, Twitter is one of the most powerful tools in the country, capable of bringing down democracy if fallen into the wrong hands, or the executives running Twitter are just regular people doing regular work, unworthy of public scrutiny. But you can't have it both ways, right? So I'll read it again. He's constantly saying, oh, Elon running one of the most important media apparatuses in the world, and he's terrible, right? So Twitter is either one of the most powerful tools in the country, capable of bringing down democracy, or the executives running Twitter are just regular people doing regular work, right? Don't look at them. So Mike Solana says, amazing having to explain to a journalist that people capable of silencing literally the fucking president wield real power, and power must be held to account. Right. So I think Mike Solana has put it perfectly. Now we've got all kinds of other reactions here. You know, even with the Ben Collins thing. Here's Jordan Schachtel. Jordan Schachtel. It's not confirmed yet, but I've been DMing with him. You'll likely see him between May 18th and 20th in Miami at Bitcoin 2023. He will be one of the independent journalists. I'm trying to gather quite a few independent journalists in order to have, not just a panel or anything like that, but a real presence of these people, because they're Bitcoiners, right? And Jordan Schachtel is a Bitcoiner. So here's his assessment. People who get spoon-fed scoops for a living are very mad online at Matt Taibbi for reporting Elon's info about the Biden censorship regime. So remember, the cope here is you're not going to see anyone deal with the facts. You're not going to see anyone deal with the facts, right? No one is going to say, oh, well, they shouldn't have done that stuff, and we got to have better systems at Twitter so that we can have reporting on bad people, but also get good information, and we can't have something like Hunter Biden's laptop story happen again. You're not going to see that story. You're going to see, as I said, boring, right? It's boring. Oh, it's boring. You're going to see Russian disinformation, which is a total lie, right? You're going to see that one. You're going to see omission. You're going to see straw man arguments. And again, you're going to see character assassinations on Elon Musk and Matt Taibbi. These are the typical authoritarian regime tactics. This is what you see when you're in China, right? This is what you see. This is the same stuff they're using right now in China for the lockdown, right? This is the same tactics. These things are not new. And these reactions are predictable, especially to a major story, right? Here's Cernovich on the same issue. There's some midwit element that goes, we already knew this. Shut up, dork, he says. You suspected it. Seeing the smoking gun is on an entirely different level. You're not that cool, smart, above it all. Tonight was a major development. And I think that's right. Max Abrams says, the establishment response. So what if there's incontrovertible evidence the Democrat Party leaders colluded with media and the CIA to lie to the American public in order to determine the presidential election outcome? Isn't that amazing? I'll read it again. So what if there's incontrovertible evidence Democratic Party leaders colluded with media and the CIA to lie to the American public in order to determine the presidential election outcome? It's amazing stuff, right? And now everyone jumping in and here's another one. Just one more good one. One more good take from Cernovich. People who call themselves journalists are upset that objectively true and valid emails are public instead of the usual practice of anonymous sources. Says it all. Because that's what the whole thing has been. Ben Collins and all of these NBC guys go with the anonymous sources, and that stuff just gets printed. We got to protect our sources. But it's always their buddy. It's always if you remember James Comey, right? When he had those leaks to the New York Times in New York around the Hillary email stuff, this was exactly what we see, right? You go to a friendly journalist, tell them what you think, and then they go publish it. They call you anonymous, but you're not anonymous. You are a character in the show. James Comey was a character, FBI director, was a character in the drama. He is not just the source. It doesn't work that way, right? There are implications for James Comey. There were major criminal implications for James Comey's behavior. I'm not saying he goes to jail, but there were criminal implications related to the story about information that was hidden, suppressed, pushed forward, edited, adapted, focused, whatever you want to call it, right? That was happening. So that they even got this far in the first place is a problem, right? And now everyone also resharing the old emails from the New York Post the day that the censorship happened. Here's one of the most damning things that did come out of the Post. They went into people's DMs and choked DM sharing of the New York Post Hunter Biden story so that it couldn't even be transmitted on Twitter. That doesn't mean posting it publicly. That means sharing it as a DM to another person who maybe could read it, take a screenshot, and find a way to get it onto Twitter. All of that stuff was suppressed. You couldn't even DM it to somebody. You couldn't DM the story to somebody. Imagine. So you wonder why Musk is trying to put encrypted DMs into Twitter, right? I think it's more important than ever now that we see this. And anyway, my advice just in general on the privacy thing, even the privacy apps, Signal, all these ones that Bitcoiners are convinced will give them privacy, they don't work. None of them work, right? You don't have privacy. I'm sorry to say, you don't. And one major reason why they don't work is because there's always another side. There's always someone on the other end. What if I just take a picture of any DM? Like, it's easy to get, right? Because it's a two-sided conversation. You can't control privacy whatsoever. There's always another person involved, always. And because the communication is two ways, it's not hard for these things to get man-in-the-middle attacked or whatever. So it doesn't really exist, right? But nevertheless, you got to make it harder. So encrypting DMs, I think, is a good idea, right? Sohrab Armari, who was one of the editors at the New York Post of this story, complained the day of. This is what he wrote. This is a big tech information coup. This is on October 14th, 2020, talking about the day the New York Post Hunter Biden story was suppressed. I, an editor at the New York Post, one of the nation's largest newspapers by circulation, can't post one of our own stories that details corruption by a major party presidential campaign, Biden. So here's what he said right when this out. It's pretty good. I like it. Spicy. This was the tweet I sent as the then op-ed editor of the New York Post on the day our Hunter Files story was banned. In light of Matt Taibbi's latest, a hearty fuck you to all the MSM blue checks who sided with privatized censorship rather than with America's oldest newspaper. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Right? It's pretty good. Let me read some of these. You're telling me you're not covering this? I'm shocked. Yeah. Who would have seen this coming? Yeah, exactly. So there you go. But how does it fit in? How does it fit in to Bitcoin? Well, I got the answer. I got the answer. Let me show you. So a few things. First, all this is happening, right? All this is happening at the same time that yesterday that a bunch of mainstream media journalists were let go. Right? There's a bunch of layoffs yesterday. We don't like anyone getting laid off during holidays, economic downturn. People have seen that. I've seen it up close in the last few months. It's happening. It's out there. So we don't take any pleasure in anyone having this kind of stress in their life. But when all these things happen, when all of these concerted efforts are going on, what's the use of their jobs, right? So this is what happened. This is from David Falkenflick. And he says, journalism Twitter is rough today, besides the Matt Taibbi scoop. Serious cuts at NPR, threat of a walkout at the New York Times, and people announcing their own layoffs at CNN and Gannett. Be good to yourselves and each other, people. Well, the be good to yourselves and each other stuff is all good, but this David Falkenflick is a person who went out of their way to criticize Emma Jo Morris, one of the people behind the original Hunter story, and said, we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories, and we don't want to waste our time and readers' stuff on an inexperienced journalist. That's what they called her at the time, right? Imagine the vindication she has in her mind that all these people are getting canned today, right? It's pretty good. And that's the beginning of this sort of reality flipping, right? Now, realize that for Bitcoin to take over, right, for hyper-Bitcoinization, we need not a bunch of people that go, oh, I like Bitcoin, and then all of a sudden we have a Bitcoin world. We need the fiat world to be so mocked. It has to be synonymous with clown world in the minds of so many people in order for us to move forward, right? We need to break reality at its base, at its core, right? We have to. There's no other way, because reality as we know it is entirely fiat-backed, right? The institutions that project the narrative, that's all for dollars, right? They're after more dollars, and dollars are behind their decisions, right? It's the same with our energy companies. It's the same with our larger communications apparatus around Wall Street and Hollywood. So it's not just political news, it's the other forms of news as well, right? All of these systems are completely oriented towards getting more dollars, right? Psychologically, that is the name of the game. The name of the game for journalists is not inform the people so that they can make informed decisions. It's not that. It has become protect power because the clients are more or less the people that pay them. Matt Taibbi, when I read Be It Resolved, Don't Trust Mainstream Media, that came from a debate in Canada the other day called the Monk Debates, and he debated Malcolm Gladwell from the New York Times about whether you should trust these things and da-da-da-da. And he came out and made his case that basically the Canadian media is currently the most corrupt media in the entire Western world. And he underlined that it's been 6 years now that all of their budget is funded, not all of their budget, most of their budget is funded by the federal government. All of our media, because they didn't want it to go out of business. Now, the reason is Canadian media is totally subsidized because Canadians will just consume American news, culture, or whatever, right? We don't, a lot of Canadians can't really even tell the difference. And they'll, they put the news on if it's American news or Canadian news, they don't really care, right? And if there's no Canadian news there, they won't watch the news. They won't watch Canadian news, right? They'll watch the news, but not Canadian news. So the argument that justified all of this is that because Canadian media was going to go out of business, it needed to be subsidized because it's not as healthy as American media that can go beyond its borders and all those things. So in the end, they subsidize it to millions of dollars a year. And we wonder why you get a situation like we have in Canada now, where the Prime Minister can go and condemn the Chinese protests, right? He can condemn the Chinese protests. Condemn the Chinese government for not allowing the people to protest, right? While everyone remembers, just a few months ago, he made me a terrorist and made many Canadians a terrorists and didn't let us protest, right? Has the media in Canada pointed out any of the hypocrisy? Of course not. It's not possible, right? Oh, thank you, Trudeau, for standing up to Xi and for standing up for the Chinese people. But what about the Chinese people that were protesting in Ottawa? There were Chinese people there too. There were Chinese people who protested with the truckers in Ottawa, for sure. For sure. Of course there are. What about them? Right? They don't care. It doesn't matter. So, you've got even crushing that October surprise story, right? Even crushing that October surprise story. Look at the kind of contrast we get to look into now. At the same time as they crushed the October surprise story, they amplified another, which was the Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, kidnapping story, right? So if you didn't know that, at the same time the Hunter Biden story was getting suppressed in 2020, another story was getting all the attention, which was a bunch of white supremacists decided they were going to kidnap the governor of Michigan and do whatever, right? Well, we find out, and I think they ended up trying to indict about 2 or 3 people. They're innocent now. Fact check that for me, please. But I believe they made it out. They were not guilty. It turns out that the handful of people they indicted were accompanied by no less than 12 FBI agents. The 12 FBI agents basically found a few low IQ suckers and talked them into agreeing to a stupid plan that was never going to work. And then they used it as a major media story. So this is from Scott Horton. The FBI crushing the laptop story was the sabotage of the GOP's October surprise. But don't forget the FBI's October surprise of their own on behalf of the Democrats, the entirely fake kidnapping and murder plot by Trump supporters against the Dem lady governor of Michigan, right? So that is a pretty big indictment. But here's where things and reality become really in question and where the big changes are coming. Yesterday, on the same day that the Twitter files came out, on the same day we saw election interference in the 2020 US election, Katie Hobbs, the governor of Arizona, was declared officially the winner. Kari Lake lost the governorship of Arizona. Kari Lake, probably the most talented politician I've ever seen in my life. I mean, way more talented than Trump, on another level of communication, on another level. Now, there's a world where she can lose. I admit that there is a scenario because she's so connected to Trump. I've always acknowledged the reality that Trump has so many haters that he could have legitimately lost an election. Like, I acknowledge that. I even forgive, let's say, the millions of people who probably felt justified in agreeing with or being okay with cheating to win the election, a bit like what Sam Harris admitted to, right? Remember, Sam Harris admitted that he didn't care if Hunter Biden had dead bodies in his attic. He would have suppressed the story anyway, because it meant keeping Trump out of office. It was that important. Now, of course, now Sam Harris is probably the best example of a broken brain, reality destroyed, no way to even put one foot in front of the other and continue to imagine what the future might look like, because he can't even reconcile what happened to him yesterday, right? Totally broken. His brain is totally broken. He is a microcosm for what's about to happen to the whole edifice, right? All of these people who, and I would even say they're patriots, the people who helped, if anyone did cheat, right? If anyone did, I would even excuse them as, or forgive them or whatever, patriots, right? The psyops that were induced on them about Trump and what was going on. I mean, if you didn't see through it and you thought it was a bunch of Nazis, of course you wanted to stop them in any means necessary would be good, of course, right? So I don't really feel like they're like, I don't want revenge, or I don't want them to pay any penalty for cheating, or if that ever happened, I don't know. Nobody knows. That's not what I want, right? I want people to acknowledge and understand and open their eyes to how they were misled 4 years ago, 3 years ago, all this time. And this story in Arizona on the same day, I think is going to help us get there, because look at the equation. We know that finance is a complete scam after SBF, right? It's a complete scam. Regulatory capture of the highest degree. We know now that the media is categorically and without even debate anymore. You don't have to engage people about this anymore. You know, it used to be, they had a monk debate in Canada, right? Just so they did, be it resolved. Do you trust the mainstream media? Malcolm Gladwell, of all people, right? Supposedly one of the smartest Canadians ever, right? Sitting there trying to argue for the New York Times. I didn't even hear one of his arguments. They're all too stupid. I mean, too stupid. And this is a smart person. Right? Malcolm Gladwell is not stupid. His arguments are dumb. They don't make sense. They would only make sense to someone who is unwilling to see reality. Only Sam Harris would be able to understand Malcolm Gladwell's arguments in this, because Matt Taibbi beat the shit out of him on stage. And weirdly, all this few days, this debate that Matt Taibbi had in Canada, in Toronto, was just like 4 days ago or something. So all kinds of stuff happening in his life right now. So amazing stuff. But we get the story in Arizona, right? So look at what's broken. The media, finance, the list goes on. Politics, of course, right? But are we supposed to sit here and assume the only thing that's not broken is the election system? Is that what we're going with? Everything's broken, but I guess we can still do elections. We're good at those, right? So the thing in Arizona that this woman has now officially won, it took a month and a bit. It happened yesterday, right? It happened yesterday that she won. That this is officially done. I don't think people have done the math here on what they've unleashed. You want to talk about Ragnarok? You want to talk about the end of things? They have just released Carrie Lake into the wild. She doesn't have to bother with Arizona anymore. Stupid Arizona. Let Katie Hobbs have it. She's gone up to the world stage now. She's gone up to the world stage. I think Trump is finished. I mean, I can't imagine out of this, right? I think that what happened is going to, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not with Trump time, that's for sure. I could be convinced at the last minute, right? I mean, I wouldn't support anyone who would deny the Matt Taibbi stuff from the past couple of days, but we're not at that point yet, so we don't have to think in those ways. But Carrie Lake, would you, could you imagine? She has all the abilities of Trump without any of the hangups, and is a woman. It's a woman, right? So it's amazing stuff. And I think that with elections, with Americans now understanding that we might not have had good elections in the United States for 50 or 60 years. Like, it might have been a lot longer than we think, right? When people say that the 2020 election was the cleanest there ever was, I believe that. It could be true. There's a world that it could be true. It just means that the ones before were that bad, right? How do you get to a point where one has managed every major metropolitan city for 70 years unopposed? 70 years unopposed. No opposition whatsoever. And they produced the results they produced, which is American cities are now unlivable shitholes. I can't live in a city anymore, unfortunately. Right? Like, I'm near Montreal because it's not an American city. It's still a civilized place that you can live in, and people don't hate each other, and there isn't violence everywhere. So it's great, you know. But I would rather be able to go to my choice of cities like it used to be, and you know, go to New York, for example. I can't live in New York anymore. I can't live there. It's fucking terrible. So reality has cracked, my friends. It has cracked. Fiat-backed reality is on the last ropes. And that's the best argument I can come up with for imminent and clear possibility of hyper-Bitcoinization. Because when things become destabilized like this, people are grasping psychologically for footing. And Bitcoin is the footing. It's the footing. It will help reorient everyone, realign everyone, bring everyone together again. I think we got more arguing in the next couple of days. I don't think we're out of the stress. Muslim Bitcoiner says, how bad is it compared to China media? It's the same thing. I mean, anyone who's around here. Well, how bad is it compared to Chinese media? Not as bad. Here's what's going on in China, actually, which is crazy. So we talked about what's his name? That's his name again. The fella who Jiang Zemin, the guy who just died, right? So people were using Jiang Zemin's obituaries. Remember, we read the obituary on the show a few days ago, talked about the obituaries being the same across the country because it has to be managed, and there was all kinds of implications because, you know, a lot of what was going on with the lockdown was actually stuff he architected, so they had to be very sneaky about how they handled it because the protests were going on at the same time. In the end, the Chinese people were using the comment sections of obituaries to criticize. So the nefariousness of the Chinese system is they started suppressing the actual obituaries. Can you imagine? They suppressed the things they were trying to promote because the people had got around it. Just like now, they arrested a bunch of kids, teenagers who were protesting. Sorry, not even teenagers who protested. Teenagers who said they were going to post white pages into the toilets, because, you know, they call this the toilet revolution because they were able to put the notes inside toilets because there's no cameras there. My prediction is they're going to ban public toilets in China. They're not. That's the only way out. They can't ban white pieces of paper at this point. So they tried to ban white pieces of paper, and they brought these kids in, right, for talking about white pieces of paper. So the Chinese situation is worse. I'd say oh, I got a mic problem today. Sorry, I am me. I thought this mic was good. I could be wrong. Getting a new mic soon, though. Or maybe US and Canada is using Chinese playbook. I think they're all using the Chinese playbook, you know? And IML says, Carrie Lake is a boss. Yeah. So the good news is fiat reality cracking big time. We got to be there to get all those ready to be converted Bitcoiners. All right, team. Enjoy your Saturday. See you tomorrow morning.